nahihirapan silang pumili, nahihirapan bumili, di si President-elect Marcos na muna ang umupo. Gawin niya yung katulad ng ginawa ni President GMA noong 2001. Kailangan natin yung kapangyarihan ng Office of the President para madali yung galaw dyan sa pagbabago ng Department of Agriculture. Dahil ang problema talaga ng Department of Agriculture yung governance.
That was Bong Inchong, President of the United Broiler Raisers Association. Attorney Inchong says President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. could sit as acting Agriculture Secretary while the cabinet seat is still vacant.
Apart from filling the position, Inchong says having Marcos lead the Agricultural Department is a strategic move as the country grapples with the looming food crisis. Time for the day's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Prices of basic goods and commodities continue to rise as the Philippines, along with the rest of the world, grapple with a shortage in food supply.
With this, several groups are calling on the next administration to focus on local manufacturing and agriculture to combat this crisis. Shaila Francisco with The Big Story.
Budgeting has become a challenge for some local shoppers as prices of several grocery items continue to rise. Jacqueline sticks to a 2,000 to 2,500 peso budget when doing grocery. But now she has no choice but to cut some products in her list.
Mahirap kasi may iba ka pang gastusin, may mga estudyante.
A supermarket association noted that prices of some items such as coffee, instant noodles, milk, cooking oil and sugar are now up by at least 1 to 2 pesos. Some increase in tranches, while others hike every other month.
Sa dami ng items sa supermarket, kukunti na lang medyo hindi nagtaas.
Even worse is that those products under the suggested retail price could also increase its prices. But the Trade Department said it's up to the next administration if they will give it the go signal. Stakeholders are calling on the incoming administration to prioritize local manufacturing and agriculture to lessen dependence on imports. Farmers and consumer groups have echoed the recommendation.
Yung epekto nung pagpapatuloy, liberalisasyon sa ating agrikultura na talagang pinapasok na todo-todo yung products ay nagresulta ng displacement sa ating mga food security frontliners.
The United Broilers Raisers Association meanwhile suggests President-elect Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to sit as acting Agriculture Secretary, at least while he is still waiting for a suitable candidate.
It is a national security matter. And it is an emergency situation. Kailangan natin yung kapangyarihan ng Office of the President para madali yung galaw dyan sa pagbabago ng Department of Agriculture. Walang kumpiyansa ang sektor sa governance ng Department of Agriculture at lalong-lalo na hawak siya ng mga ekonomista na ang paniwala ay import liberalization at anti-production.
Inchong added that the agriculture sector has lost its confidence in the department, so a change in its governing body is a must. Shaila Francisco, WR1 News.
What changes does the Agriculture Department need to address a looming food crisis? That big question and more with Agriculture Secretary William Dar. We speak with him over the phone. Secretary Dar, welcome po to The Big Story.
Yes, Ruby, Gretchen, magandang gabi po sa lahat.
Magandang gabi po sa kanilang lahat. Sir, bago natin pag-usapan ang changes sa Agriculture Department, let's talk about the food situation, whether you call it a shortage or a looming crisis. How much of the problem that we anticipate is actually caused by external factors? In other words, how much of this problem is within our control to fix and how much of it is not within our control?
Okay, in general, we can fix this problem. We have just to start early and do everything possible to level up local food production. And we have to use local materials. But there are countries that we are talking that they are still able to supply us with their inputs. So I believe it's a matter of really elevating local food production. That's the policy direction.
Doon po particularly sa mga inaangkat natin, is it a problem of production and supply or is it just a problem of logistics and pricing?
Lahat po ito combat, di ba? We bring in agricultural input for livestock, poultry, aquaculture, and fertilizer for crops. So if that is disturbed and the prices are too exorbitant, then that will really impact into our local food production.
Okay, in the meantime po, pag-usapan natin ang Department of Agriculture. Wala pa pong na-appoint. I won't ask you who, but I will ask you, ano pong kailangan natin na Agriculture Secretary? What qualities and qualifications are important given the crisis we're trying to get out of?
Well, with this looming crisis, it's someone who knows the subject matter and who has competence and have experience. Para sa ganun, alam na niya dyan. So someone who loves this country very much.
Okay, Secretary Dar, maraming salamat po. That was Agriculture Secretary William Dar. With more and more manufacturers requesting for a price hike for their products, consumers could find themselves with fewer purchasing power. Gretchen, how does the trade industry plan to help consumers?
Robbie, the Trade Department is asking manufacturers to deplete its stock before raising the price of goods. DTI Undersecretary Ruth Castelo says stocks will last for at least 3 more months and that this could temporarily put off price hikes. Retailers still have a month's worth of inventory on them. The DTI says it has yet to review requests to raise prices and leaves it up to the incoming administration to approve price hikes.
Itong mga requests na to, request pa lang naman, hindi pa naman sigurado kasi inaaral pa ng DTI. Baka hindi na po umabot. At ang sinasabi kasi natin sa kanila, kakapublish lang natin ng May 11. Kaya hindi po kami nag-approve agad-agad.
These are the other big stories tonight. A shortage in buses, priority fees. LTFRB looks to address the woes of commuters waiting in transfer stations and looks into reports of ride-hailing apps charging a priority boarding fee. Meanwhile, preparations for the inauguration of President-elect Marcos Jr. are underway, with the police now ramping up security measures. And the Boston Celtics drew first blood in round 1 of the NBA Finals, handing the Golden State Warriors its first postseason loss. These big stories after the break.
the big story, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. As the economy fully opens or reopens, transport terminals are filled to the brim, with commuters reportedly having a harder time getting a ride home.
The LTFRB says it may look into adding more buses in terminals. Gerard de la Peña has the story.
Carol rushes to catch a jeepney along Commonwealth Avenue so that she can take her child to Anonas. She says it is always difficult for her to take a ride, especially during rush hours.
Mahirap po pag ganitong umaga.
Tapos may bitbit kayo na.
Opo, araw-araw.
Pregnant women like Charlotte find it more difficult to catch a bus.
Sobrang hirap kasi yung mga tao parang iisa may sinasakyan. Sobrang sikipan.
The number of commuters is slowly going back to pre-pandemic levels, but the LTFRB says the supply of PUVs is not a concern as there are enough buses plying the EDSA carousel route. Free rides are expected here until the end of the month. Authorities admit, though, that the challenge lies on the effective dispatch of buses, especially during peak hours.
Meron po tayong mga monitoring system na kung saan nilalagay natin sa tama yung mga numero ng mga units.
To address this, the Interagency Council for Traffic has deployed skip buses in highly congested stations. And to ensure that there will be enough jeepneys and other PUVs, the LTFRB is letting local government units assign new routes.
Sila na po yung responsible in having to determine, plan, and approve the routes that are already there. I mean, that's what they need on the ground, no? And subject to the review process ng DOTR LTFRB.
The agency says free ride programs may be extended beyond June 30 depending on the next administration. But for now, the LTFRB assures the public that fare hikes are not in the offing. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, We Are One News.
Meanwhile, acting on complaints, the LTFRB warns ride-hailing apps against charging users with a priority boarding fee. The LTFRB issued a statement after receiving an anonymous report that a transport network company was charging passengers a 1,000 peso priority boarding fee for a one-way trip. The agency is now investigating the allegation, but the ride-hailing app argues the priority boarding feature is optional and not compulsory. LTFRB Chairman Martin Delgra says the feature goes against the agency's guidelines.
Ngayon, nakita ko may isang report na iba lang yung pangalan, priority fee. Pero it's still a case of overcharging insofar as LTFRB is concerned.
On the upside of the economy almost in full swing, more consumers are confident to swipe their credit cards yet again as they regain the ability to pay their dues. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez gives us a front seat to this story.
30-year-old process analyst Rovi Maniebo has been a credit card user for 3 years already. Per month, her credit card spendings range from 2,000 to 5,000 pesos.
Usually, ang mga ginagamit ako ng credit card is yung gadgets. Minsan, ginagamit ko siya kapag magbubook ako ng airfare ticket ng mga hotel for staycations.
Rovi, however, had to limit her credit card use during the pandemic due to travel and economic restrictions. But with the resumption of economic activities, RCBC Bank Card President and CEO Arniel Vincent Ong said consumer confidence has already improved.
People are buying more airline tickets now than they were last year. Purchases for clothing and apparel as people are more out these days. Food and dining is up. Gas and fuel transactions are up.
Pagagamit ko ulit yung credit card kasi matutuloy ulit yung pag-travel namin.
Amid the continuous growth for cashless payments, Ong added they're also seeing an increase in credit card transactions this year.
First quarter, industry is up by about 11%. Transactions are up by about 45% compared to same period last year.
Data from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas show monthly credit card billings rose by 34% last year despite its moderate demand in the second half of 2021. Consumers now also find it easier to pay their credit card dues unlike before when prolonged lockdowns have affected their income.
When I look at the data, primarily non-performing loans within the credit cards businesses in the industry, this has already gone down.
Ong added the bank is expecting more credit card issuances for 2022. They're seeing a rise by up to 10% this year compared to last year. Meanwhile, the BSP has kept interest rates capped at 24% annually. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
For the big story in sports, the Boston Celtics draw first blood in the 2022 NBA Finals after a furious fourth-quarter rally versus the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors entered the night undefeated on their home floor, and for 3 quarters, it looked like that trend would continue. But that was until Boston outscored the Dubs 40-16 in the fourth to come away with the win 120-108. Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, and Derek White led the way for the Celtics, all scoring over 20 points. Game 2 is set on Monday, still in San Francisco. Time for another quick break. When we return, security checks are already underway for the inauguration of President-elect Marcos Jr. at the National Museum. And as early as now, the PNP appeals for protesters to hold off on conducting rallies. Meanwhile, another subvariant of Omicron has made its way into the Philippines. 2 cases of BA.5 have been recorded by the Department of Health. And it's more fun and more inclusive in the Philippines as a deaf tour guide makes it fun for the fellow deaf to tour the country. Details after the break.
Still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The Philippine National Police has prepared its security measures for the inauguration of incoming President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at the National Museum.
As early as now, the PNP is asking protesters not to disrupt the ceremony on June 30. Marlene Alcaide with this report.
Starting June 6 until July 4, the National Museum of Fine Arts at the old Legislative Building will be closing its doors. This is to give way to preparations for the inauguration of incoming President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. To secure the venue, the Philippine National Police has met with several agencies. Task Force Manila was also created to help with the inauguration.
We will initiate yung mga traffic control and management po natin. Inaasahan po natin na maaaring magkaroon po ng mga traffic rerouting doon sa mga ibang pangunahing kalsada dyan.
To further ensure a safe program, representatives from the Public Works Department and the Office of the President came to inspect the museum on Friday.
Hindi, manggagaling siya sa kalye dahil hindi po, pag tinakas na sinabi, pag
protesters will also be allowed to carry demonstrations but only in designated areas.
Babala kami na itaguyod yung ating karapatan na makapagpahayag at mapayapang protesta para maipabatid ang mga hiniing ng mamamayan sa papasok na ikalawang rehimeng Marcos. Mapayapang pagkilos to.
However, the PNP still appeals to protesters not to disrupt the event.
Sana po ay kung ano yung inilatag nating seguridad, sana hayaan po nila na mag-proceed at umusad yung inaasahan nga po nating inauguration.
Marcos Jr.'s camp will also be following the tradition of having the Chief Justice administer the oath. In this case, Chief Justice Alexander Gismundo. However, the Supreme Court said they have yet to receive a formal request. Meanwhile, the National Police has also created Task Force Davao to assist Vice President-elect Sara Duterte's inauguration on June 19. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
Meanwhile, the Department of Health says it has detected 2 cases of another Omicron subvariant BA.5. The 2 cases are from the same household in Central Luzon. DOH Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeres says they are fully vaccinated with booster shots and have no travel history outside the country. Omicron subvariant BA.5 is one of the 2 variants that caused a surge in South Africa back in May. The DOH also announced that starting June, its 24/7 vaccination drive-thru in Quirino Grandstand will no longer be operational.
In world news, the United States is backing the Philippines in opposing China's seasonal fishing ban in the West Philippine Sea. In a statement, the U.S. Department of State emphasized that China's moratorium goes against the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal ruling and international law. They are calling on China to abide by its obligations to the law. Recall that the Philippines had earlier summoned a Chinese envoy over the unilateral fishing ban and the alleged harassment of a marine research vessel by a Chinese Coast Guard ship.
The most popular teen stars in the planet are back with a bang. After the debut of Stranger Things Season 4 Volume 1, the show raked in record-breaking numbers. News 5 got the chance to exclusively chat with the main characters of the series here in Sydney, Australia. Stranger Things 4 Volume 1 just debuted last weekend, and it is the biggest premiere ever for an English title on Netflix, with more than 286 million watch hours. One to watch out for this season is Sadie Sink's impressive performance, which some say deserves an Emmy nomination.
I don't know. I mean, that's really nice of them to say. It was a really fun, crazy season to film.
Season 4 Volume 1 picks up from the battle at Starcourt Mall. This is also the first time that the gang separated, with Elle leaving Hawkins to go to California for high school.
And just incredible, and I think we expand upon what we did in part 1 quite nicely. And I think we wrap up the season in a really exciting way.
Fans can now watch the latest season of Stranger Things on Netflix. From Sydney, Australia, and for News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
It's more fun for all. That is the tagline of the Tourism Department as it promotes inclusivity and accessibility for the country's tourism sites.
Staying true to their campaign, the rights of women and persons with disability were highlighted in the DOT's new tourism videos. Meet Emerson Tabunan, a deaf Manila tour guide. Emerson is just one of many tour guides who, despite his disability, provides a memorable experience to tourists and visitors.
The DOT also showcased the barrier-free accessibility of the Museo ng Muntinlupa. The program seeks to create more accessibility for all types of travelers, including PWDs, senior citizens, and pregnant women.
Napakaganda ng programa.
Very good program. Really encouraging. At mamaya kausap natin ang incoming DOT Secretary sa the Chief. So abangan niyo po yan. Hopefully, a lot of really good plans for tourism, which is also a very important sector for our economy.
I actually heard that she wants to promote Mindanao, and galing ako sa Mindanao several months ago. I really enjoyed my stay there. I think there's a lot of opportunity to discover the beautiful places there. So I'm excited to tune in to the Chiefs.
At napakaganda naman talaga ng buong bayan.
And that wraps up today's Big Story. Catch us again Monday at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And get vaccinated, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.